When is the last time you went sunbathing?
I'm not too big into it. So beautiful.
That's what I do.
Welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Jordan Yule with you guys. Jordan's, of course, on Rebel HQ, and he's the host of Insurgents podcast. We have an amazing show for you guys today. Israel says we didn't get all the uranium in Iran. Oh, for God's sake, come on, man. But a much more interesting story, that was kind of predictable in a sense, is how does Israel target its critics inside the US? Well, we found out a lot about that today in court hearings, so super interesting story. The MAGA rebellion on Epstein files continues. It's now at an 11. So everyone's enraged. It's spread to Fox News. It's spread to all the podcasters, spread to Steve Bannon, etc. We'll get to that in a little bit. And then we've nominated the equivalent of Borat for an ambassador position. A guy who's a full-blown, might even do the makeup in his ambassador position. So that's later in the show. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's peak idiocracy. So that's a little bit later in the program too. All right, Jordan, let's get started.
The Trump administration's attempt to end birthright citizenship has once again been thwarted by a judge. Last month, the Supreme Court prevented federal judges from issuing nationwide injunctions. Those were used to limit executive power, but the ACLU has found a way around the Supreme Court's ruling. And we'll explain all of the details in just a second. But Cenk, what do you make of this new development and how do you think it'll end?
Yeah, so it was kind of inevitable. I'm very curious to see how the Supreme Court's gonna react to it. But there's a twist in this ruling that I'm a little bit worried about. It seems like a really good ruling. It's by a judge that was appointed by George W. Bush, but hold for the twist.
Okay, well, let's get into those details. Hours after the Supreme Court's ruling on nationwide injunctions, the ACLU filed a new lawsuit in an attempt to save birthright citizenship. The ACLU's lawsuit had proposed that all children born in the United States after February 20th and their parents constituted a class. It warned that under the terms of Trump's order, people born to parents in the country unlawfully risked being rendered effectively stateless. Federal Judge Joseph L. LaPlante certified that as a class action lawsuit. However, LaPlante did limit the class to newborns specifically, not their parents, but all the same, LaPlante described the preliminary injunction as not a close call to the court from the bench, noting that the deprivation of US citizenship and abrupt policy change pose irreparable harm. LaPlante has stayed his order for 7 days, which leaves time for an appeal. Cenk, this seems somewhat clever. I think credit is in order for the ACLU. What do you make of this?
Yeah, so ACLU, great work, and it's obvious because it says it right in the 14th Amendment. If you're born in America, you're a US citizen. So this is not really a case. And a lot of legal experts are saying the court could just rule on the face of this suit. It's absurd. So there is a way that they could just get rid of it entirely, but it's still gonna have to get appealed and work through the court system, etc. So the one thing the twist that I'm a little bit worried about, Jordan, is that it might apply to the unborn children. It's a conservative judge, and so I don't know if it'll be taken as precedence to treat the unborn as if they're human and have constitutional rights. I hope it doesn't get interpreted in that way and is strictly about newborns. But you'd really, with the law, you really got to get into the nitty gritty, and depending on how other judges take it, in a different direction, et cetera, whether that could be an issue, but I'm not positive about that in this ruling. But I am positive that it was absolutely necessary, because remember, guys, as we talked about last time, if a baby's born here and you don't have birthright citizenship, then it's on the hospital to try to figure out the citizenship status of the parents. All right, do you have a green card or a US citizen? How do I confirm you're a US citizen? How do I know you're a legal resident? You have to bring in court proceedings saying that you got refugee status. Because there's a lot of different statuses. And so the doctors or the hospitals have to figure that out as tons of babies are getting born. And then if you can't figure that out while it's going through the court system, yes, all those children become effectively stateless, as the court said. And that's absurd. I mean, what does it even mean to be stateless? Actually, it is a thing. The reason is the Palestinians are stateless. So they have no rights in any country they go to. It's the worst possible scenario. So you would have all of these kids that are born that are presumably American citizens, but we wouldn't know, and they'd be treated like Palestinians. So God help them, right? By the world, because they'd be stateless. And then we'd have to go back and try to figure out through endless litigation, endless litigation, whether they're citizens or not citizens, what their parents' status is, et cetera. So in order to avoid a bureaucratic nightmare of epic proportions, the judge had to rule this way.
Yeah, I think it's a good point about putting the doctors or the nurses, the medical staff in that position to determine citizenship. That's not something that would lead to responsible or thorough or the best possible outcome for a kid. And as we've seen in other aspects, other areas of our society that have been a target for the right, for instance, child care or gender affirming care for trans people, it's not just that the right has gone after trans people, they've also gone after the doctors administering that care. And as the fervor intensifies over this type of stuff, if we do find ourselves in that scenario, God forbid, I wouldn't put it past the right to start zeroing in and singling out doctors for misapplying nationality or place of origin of their parents. I think it's going to create a monster headache and potential consequences for these medical professionals who shouldn't be in that position to begin with. And this is a problem the right has created. This is, like you say, explicitly laid out in the 14th Amendment. We shouldn't be here. This shouldn't be a question. And while I applaud the ACLU for this legal maneuvering to try to protect birthright citizenship, it's ludicrous that they even need to reach to this, that we have reached this extent that you need to file a class action lawsuit to preserve a constitutional right. I don't know what to make sense of it. Jake, anything else before we go to our next story?
Real quick, last things here. There's a couple of things that are patently obvious from this. So why did this come up in the first place? Definitely a radical right idea. There's no dispute about it. It's not like the left is asking for it or the middle is asking for it. No, it was a radical right idea that, hey, maybe if you're born in America, we should ignore the 14th Amendment and not let you become an American citizen. Okay, so that's indisputable that it was their bad idea. So now the good news is country united in a sense, because that's the ACLU, largely on the left, although sometimes they actually agree with the right in some bizarre ways that drives me crazy. But anyways, but very much considered on the left. And a conservative judge going, yeah, the 14th Amendment is not unclear. So great, that's the court's holding. And then the last thing that's clear from this is, guys, remember, even if you're in the radical right and you're like, American citizens, absolutely. And if you're not an American citizen, I don't care if you have a green card, I don't care if you're a day from being naturalized as a citizen, you have no rights, I hate you, etc. Okay, all good and fine, but when the hospital asks you, okay, yes, but are you US citizens, because we got to figure out where your kid is, and you say yes, then they say, well, how do I know? The last guy said yes too, and the guy before him said yes. Everybody said yes. So now I have to go and try to figure out if you're a US citizen or not. Now I got to investigate you. What is this? It's crazy. And it's definitely not America. So all of that is clear.
Well, let's get into our next story. Cenk teased it at the top. A senior Homeland Security official admitted in court yesterday what we already suspected, that his department had relied on shadowy pro-Israel groups to target foreign students who participated in pro-Palestinian activism. The admission came from Peter Hatch, the Assistant Director of Homeland Security Investigations Department within ICE. Cenk, they're relying on groups that we've known about as shadowy and targeting these kids for years, and now they're influencing government operations. This is a scary development. What do you think?
So first of all, this is an anonymous group. We don't even know if it's being run out of Israel. And it is definitely on behalf of a foreign government, Israel. And as you'll see in the story, the whole idea of anti-Semitism, et cetera, is just a ruse. They're tracking anyone who criticizes Israel. In fact, if they consider you pro-Palestinian, you'll be put on a list that the American government is now using to kidnap people and take away their rights. So this is as bad as anyone imagined. And it turns out these groups have been operating in America since the 1980s, making lists of students and professors who they consider to be too pro-Palestinian and trying to ruin their lives, including making sure that they never get a job again in America if they dare to criticize Israel. So there's something terrible and nefarious going on in this country, and it's definitely coming from Israel. I mean, here's the overwhelming proof you're about to see, including in court hearings that just happened.
Right. Well, Hatch was testifying during the third day of trial proceedings in a case brought by academic associations against the Trump administration for their efforts to deport foreign students like Mahmoud Khalil and Rumeja Ozturk. The academic groups called Hatch as a witness, and he delivered. The judge asked him, "Many of the names of the student protesters provided to you for the Office of Intelligence to produce reports of analysis on came from the website Canary Mission," referring to an anonymously run group that doxes people, let's be clear, and who have engaged in pro-Palestinian activism on their online database. Hatch responded, "It's true. Many of the names, or even most of the names, came from that website, but we were getting names and leads from many different sources. The other sources included Batar, another pro-Israel group. In total, he had a list of over 5,000 names to investigate." In March, Hatch testified he formed a Tiger Team, or a specialized task force, to respond to abrupt orders that he rush analysis on thousands of people whose names and identities had been published by Canary Mission. Hatch testified that after the team's review, between 100 and 200 reports on non-citizen protesters were submitted to the State Department, which would determine whether to detain them. He claimed that the government doesn't have any formal relationship with Canary Mission and doesn't even know who runs the website. Nonetheless, one of the likely victims of this informal collaboration was Rumeja Ozturk, the Tufts student who was abducted by federal agents for writing an op-ed critical of Israel. Canary Mission had identified her on their website, accusing her of anti-Semitism and anti-Israel activism. When Ozturk was detained, Canary Mission claimed credit, asserting that her profile was the primary cause of her arrest. A Department of Homeland Security memo justifying her detention reportedly used language nearly identical to that of her Canary Mission page, like Canary Mission DHS cited her op-ed. Cenk, the fact that shadowy, anonymous doxing websites are now providing lists to DHS for potential deportations, it's a dark new day in America.
Yeah, so these type of websites have been around since 1983, and so there's a guy who was an NYU professor, Zachary Lockman. He got listed on one of these sites back in the 1980s, and they provided college guides, meaning for colleges for professors to never hire because they criticized Israel in one way, shape, or form. And by the way, it didn't have to be, first of all, none of it had anything to do with anti-Semitism. It was just either criticism of Israel or anything that was considered pro-Palestinian. And so they would put people on a list. Now, how do you say it doesn't have to do with anti-Semitism? There was Jewish professors on the list. There was Noam Chomsky was on the list, right? So it didn't matter at all if you were Jewish, not Jewish. The only thing that mattered is, will you bow your head to Israel? In fact, Mother Jones has a terrific story about this. You should read it in its entirety because it's shocking. It's amazing. They would say, okay, this is to the outside world. They say this is anti-discrimination, right? But they then put pressure on the universities: do not admit any Arab students, because if you admit Arab students, they have anti-Israel positions, and that's unacceptable. Don't let any Arabs into the country. They're supposed to be fighting discrimination. No, they were literally perpetuating discrimination. And in this latest version of it, and Canary starts in 2014, the Canary mission does, they start putting up the pictures. I mean, you want to talk about doxing and the address and everything about the people going. And by the way, they say in that, on the website too, making sure that we're basically ruining the job prospects of any of these people. This is before, and remember, it starts in 2014. Before 2023, before all this, they got more and more brazen, before they basically captured the entire US government through the Trump administration and said, oh yeah, anyone you want to arrest on behalf of Israel, America's here to serve you loyally, right? But back then, they were mainly trying to make sure that they would ruin your life and that no one would ever hire you if you criticize Israel. So when it comes to Öztürk and the others, well, what got you on the list for Canary Mission these days? Mother Jones explains, attending an anti-war protest, for example, becomes, quote, participation in a pro-Hamas rally. And criticism of Israeli policies is framed as, quote, demonizing Israel. So that gets you on the list, and as Jordan just explained to you, the US government took their list directly, and by the way, kept saying throughout the court proceedings, we didn't have time to look into this. We assembled a tiger team to look through it quickly. But basically, if these guys say we should eliminate them on behalf of Israel from existing in this country and deport them, arrest them, etc., that's it. We're just going to do it. We're going to do it. And who are these people? I don't know. They're anonymous. They could be Israelis. They could be government agents of Israel, or they could just be some people inside the country who are like, no, I love Israel, and if it means destroying America's Constitution and freedom of speech and discriminating against all Arabs and Muslims, yeah, of course, on behalf of Israel, we must do all this. Now it's in court. US government officials saying, yes, we took their list and arrested people based on it. So don't tell me that Israel doesn't have unbelievable, epic, record-breaking influence in America. The only way to say that is if you're a full-fledged liar and you just say, I don't care. I find it offensive. How dare you? Oh, did you go to a peace protest? If you went to a peace protest, I don't care if you're Jewish. I don't care if you're a Holocaust survivor. I don't care about anything. You go to a peace protest, you're a pro-Palestinian, the worst thing you could be. And you see how I'm against discrimination? No, you're not. No, all of this is massive discrimination, and not just against Arabs and Muslims, but against people who are trying to stop a genocide of all races and religions. And yes, Americans go on these lists. They just happen to take the guys who are legally here but not citizens first, okay? And I guess we're next for all the US citizens, because God help you if you cross Israel, you're gonna go on a list and they're gonna try to ruin your life.
Yeah, I wanna be clear about, they're talking about Ramesia Ozturk, who wrote an op-ed, and while they say it's anti-Semitic and anti-Israel activism, you could read the op-ed for yourself, and I have, and I would encourage people to check it out, just so you see how fast and loose they're playing with these terms. While in the first paragraph, it briefly summarizes what Israel is doing in Gaza, links to validation and sources backing up her claims, The Guardian, Amnesty International, and the International Court of Justice. It then goes on for the remainder of the op-ed to call on Tufts University to divest from Israel. That's what they're saying is anti-Semitic. Doesn't say anything about Jewish people. And I want to be clear, those are two separate things. Well, Israel is an ethno state, and they are an apartheid state, and it is a home for Jewish people. That's not one and the same. It's not anti-Semitism to criticize Israel and the Israeli government's actions. She's calling on Tufts University to divest from Israel and Israeli companies. That's, in my mind, totally fun. That is a peaceful form of protest. That is a peaceful form of activism. But they have fought so hard to limit and demonize any attempts at activism or advocacy around this issue, as we've shown and talked about for years. Even boycotting, divestment, and sanctions in some states is now illegal. Where's the love of free speech that we hear so much about? Nobody cares. And now if you even talk about it, if you write an op-ed, quintessential free expression in this country, if you call for a boycott or a divestment in an op-ed, that gets you put on a list and the government's going to arrest you. It is horrifying stuff, Cenk.
All right, I'm gonna tell you 3 more amazing facts. So back in the 2000s, there was a very similar group called Masada 2000. And they created a list of what they considered, quote, self-hating and or Israel-threatening Jew. And by the way, if you spell that out, it's S-H-I-T, Jew, okay? And so they compiled a list of over 8,000 Jewish Americans who are not sufficiently loyal to Israel. I mean, what is this? I mean, that is picture perfect proof that all of these groups since the 1980s have nothing to do with anti-Semitism. In fact, they actively target Jewish professors and Jewish students if they think that they are not sufficiently loyal to a different country. They're like, how dare you be loyal to America? How dare you be fair and honest? That's it. Put the Jews on the list. Are you insane? Are you insane? And this is a pro-Israel group doing this. And then you find out that guess who wrote this giant report targeting about 117 professors and university staff members and students back in 2001. It was called Defending Civilization, How Our Universities Are Failing America and What Could Be Done About It. So how did the professors and students get on that list? If they opposed any of our wars. And the person who wrote it was Lynn Cheney, Dick Cheney's wife, who at the time was Secretary of Defense and in the middle of trying to start a war in Afghanistan and Iraq. So same old trick, go to the universities. If anyone dares oppose Israel's wars, that's it, they get put on a blacklist, right? And if you're thinking again, if you're right wing and you're like, look, I don't like any of this, but it's okay, I'm an American citizen, it's not gonna affect me, they can't deport me. Well, first of all, sometimes they do, okay? Sometimes they do arrest the wrong people, etc. But hold, it's not just about that. So on Canary Mission's website, it says about the people that they have targeted, American or otherwise. It is to, quote, ensure that today's radicals are not tomorrow's employees. So you want to talk about cancel culture. Since the 1980s, Israel has been running a cancel culture program in America for anyone who dares oppose Israel, even in the slightest. And it doesn't matter if you're Muslim, Christian, or Jewish, they're gonna target you and try to ruin you on behalf of a foreign government. And so now that the US has confirmed in a court proceeding that yes, we're basically following this anonymous group's orders to eliminate Israel's enemies inside America, are we gonna get to find out who's running it anonymously? Or is it okay? And can Qatar then set up a website like this, and Saudi Arabia and Malaysia and whoever else? Or by the way, just random companies, oil companies, etc. And just smear people in any way. Or go call them racist, call them this, call them that, right? It's okay, you're gonna ruin your chance of getting employed or doing anything positive. Don't tell me that we're not, being influenced in a massive, massive way from Israel. It has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. It definitely is the opposite of protecting against discrimination. It is incredibly in favor of discrimination. So I'm done with all of the massive propaganda, and yes, mainly by mainstream media, that if you ever question Israel, that's it, put him on a list. Okay, yeah, anti-Semite, ruin his life, get him off there, not allowed. Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, CNN might as well be Canary Mission. Who are they kidding? This has been my life the entire time that I've been in the US. If you ever question Israel, the world comes crashing down on you because it turns out there's a giant infrastructure meant to destroy anyone who opposes Israel in America. But we can't find out who it is because they're all anonymous. These guys are anonymous. AIPAC's donors are anonymous. Everybody's anonymous, but they get to buy our government, they get to buy our politicians. And here, Trump has put up a for sale sign going, yeah, I'll take Canary Mission's list, who cares? And I'll eliminate anybody's that's an enemy or critic of Israel, or even pro-Palestinian, or even went to a peace protest. This is not what America's supposed to look like. This is another country trying to destroy our Constitution. All right, we got to take a break, guys. We'll be right back. Let's go to our members on tyt.com. Boomer Dragon Cat says, married life is treating you well, Jordy. You look so nice today. And I actually agree with her that you look fresh. Yeah, you look like you, I don't know. I think Cat nailed it. Okay, so God bless. Eclectic Miscellanea says, Cenk and Jordan co-hosting. Should I get some popcorn ready just in case? We like to say, what do we agree on 97% of stuff, but get the popcorn just in case, you never know. Trump Loy writes in, thank you ACLU. And yes, in this case, thank you ACLU. Why do I keep saying in this case? ACLU's for money in politics, and it drives me crazy. So, but they're great on everything else. Asimov's Prophet says, I'm waiting for them to set up ICE offices and maternity wards. I swear as I read that, I thought, should I read it out loud or should I not? Because I don't want to give them any ideas. So, I mean, wait for it. Jenks Left Tricep of Fury says, just came from my dental cleaning. I was chatting with my dental hygienist. She's a young Hispanic lady who told me how scared she is to go out. She's afraid to be arrested by ICE. I live in South Florida, so it's very real with the alligator Alcatraz opening up. I felt so bad for her and tried to make her feel better, but it's a very real concern. I feel helpless. So look, guys, they covered it on the show yesterday in the first hour, so I wasn't on it, but that story of alligator Alcatraz with the maggots in the food, and the lights on 24 hours. It said they're torturing them. And people are yelling into the phone, we're legal residents, we're legal. And Trump and that team doesn't care at all. They're like, yes, we get to be cruel to people. And if you're on the right and you're getting a big kick out of that, not deporting people, okay, that's a different thing, okay? But getting a kick out of being cruel to people, especially when they're here legally. No, brother, you gotta look into yourself, man. Get some freaking therapy, because the rest of us are not on board with that at all. I don't want America to be some weirdo torture country. That's what Dick Cheney wanted. Virginia and South Carolina says, yes, the 14th Amendment is very clear unless you try to get into the ballot in South Carolina. You got that right in Virginia. So Virginia was there when I was trying to get on the ballot in South Carolina, and the Democratic Party came out and said, no way, naturalized citizens shouldn't have the same rights as natural born citizens. We don't want to be associated with this guy. We're against these civil rights. Good for you, Democratic Party. You must be so proud. Diane Druck says, my boyfriend's a doctor. He's naturalized, but many are not. He has 2 residents that are from Muslim majority countries and are having difficulty obtaining visas. But don't worry, they're trying to fight discrimination. This has nothing to do with discrimination. This has to do with, okay, if you're in any way not a US citizen, oh my God, if you're Muslim or Arab or Latino these days, God help you. Don Dada Dragon says, crazy how we're able to find a list of a bunch of students protesting, but not Epstein's list. Oh, that's a great point. I might have to use that in a tweet. Excellent. All right, Love 18 What Girl says, Jorby. We'll be back. TYT, Cenk, Jordan with you guys. Jordan, what do you got next?
Cenk, questions are swirling around 88-year-old Representative Eleanor Holmes Norton's political future, in part because she's saying something totally different than her staff. In June, she told NBC's Sahil Kapoor that she plans to run for re-election. Just hours later, however, Norton's office published a statement clarifying that Norton was in conversations with her family, friends, and closest advisors to decide what's best. Norton celebrated her 88th birthday days later. 2 weeks later, it happened again. In another report from Kapoor, published June 25th, Norton reaffirmed her intention to run for office. And again, her office scrambled to notify the media that a firm decision on her future had not yet been made. Cenk, there's a related story on Biden I want to get to momentarily. But first, what do you make of this? How do you make sense of this?
Yeah, I mean, look, greed is infinite, including for power. But also, these politicians are just widgets. The donors are going to dictate their vote no matter who's in place. So I've explained this phenomenon before. I'll get into it a little bit after you find out how horrific all the details are with not just Eleanor Holmes Norton, but with Joe Biden, and how his staffers, as you're going to find out, knew for a fact he can't answer simple questions. His brain has already melted, and they're like, "Oh no, 4 more years, 4 more years." Because they're like, what difference does it make? He's not gonna make any stupid decisions anyway. Israel will make the decisions on foreign policy. Big Pharma will make the decisions about healthcare. Big Oil will make the decisions about energy. It doesn't matter, they're just widgets. But okay, let's tell you about which widgets are trying to stay in place.
Yeah, well, also, I just want one other thing on Eleanor Holmes Norton. I think that thinking applies to everyone else in Congress, but she's a non-voting member of Congress because she represents DC. So it's like, what exactly is she holding on to if not just like the pomp and circumstance and the quality of life? It's a very bizarre scenario. I think because she keeps saying she's running and her staff's like, nah, let's wait on that. That coupled with her poor driving record, which has been chronicled for over a decade, makes me worried there's something else going on there. But relatedly, we have more details on the great lengths that Biden's team went to in order to shield the former president even after he left office. On Tuesday, New York Times White House correspondent Tyler Pager published an excerpt from his book, 2024, How Trump Retook the White House and Democrats Lost America, which illustrates some of those efforts. Pager was originally told by Biden's aides that he wasn't interested in speaking for the book. Yet when I reached Mr. Biden on his cell phone in late March, he answered and agreed to talk. He broke his silence on his successor to criticize the early weeks of Mr. Trump's second term. I don't see anything he's done that's been productive, the former president said. When I asked if he had any regrets about dropping out of the presidential race, Mr. Biden said in a detached tone, "No, not now. I don't spend a lot of time on regrets." And then he hung up because he was boarding an Amtrak train. My brief conversation with Mr. Biden prompted a cascade of concern among his top aides. One screamed at me for calling the former president directly. Others texted furiously, trying to figure out how I had obtained Mr. Biden's phone number. Repeated attempts to contact Biden after their initial conversation went straight to voicemail, which simply said, "Joe." But then, 2 days later, that greeting was replaced by a message from Verizon Wireless. The number you dialed has been changed, disconnected, or is no longer in service. It's also worth noting that yesterday, Biden's former White House physician, Dr. Kevin O'Connor, refused to answer House Republicans' questions on Biden's health while in office. He was subpoenaed by the House Oversight Committee last month. David Schertler, one of O'Connor's lawyers, said the doctor had no choice but to invoke his Fifth Amendment rights in testimony before the committee. Schertler cited both O'Connor's responsibilities to protect patient privacy as a doctor and the Justice Department's ongoing investigation into Biden's use of the auto pen. Republican Representative James Comer, the chair of the Oversight Committee, stated that O'Connor's refusal to testify was evidence of a cover-up. mean, Cenk, they changed his phone number. This seems ridiculous.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things to go through there. First of all, the Republicans start a slew of nonsense investigations, right? It's annoying, it's political, and they often, they're so brazen, they'll just say it. Like, oh yeah, we started the Hillary Clinton Benghazi investigations and the email investigations to ruin her chance of winning. I'm like, oh, okay, so we're just saying it on air now, okay. And those are like, at least people died in Benghazi, you get it, the emails, etc. But then there'll be like, just absolute garbage investigations that make no sense at all. But the auto pen one, I kind of get, right? Like, who did sign the bills? Are we sure Biden signed all the bills? Are we sure Biden was of the right mind when he signed all the bills? And I like some of those bills, but it's a fair question to ask. And so, I mean, and guys, remember, we now have doctors from both sides saying ludicrous things. At least O'Connor's saying like, I'm not allowed to say how bad off Biden is. Like, come on. So, I mean, there's two different things, right? His obvious, like dementia. Well, it's not just obvious to us, it's obviously obvious to his staffers, which I'll come back to in 1 second, right? So, but then there's also the issue of the cancer that he has, and when did they know it, and what medication did they give him, and did that contribute to the fogginess in his brain, right? Those are real questions, and that medication that treats that kind of cancer does cause foggy brain. So, on the Democratic side, they're like, no, our doctors can't tell you how terrible and old and ancient and ridiculous our, not just candidates, the president was, right? On the other hand, on the Republican side, it's comical. They send out doctors say, Donald Trump is the fittest man in America. The most fit president we've ever had, he's 215 pounds. Come on, guys. I mean, I don't know that there's anything as ridiculous with Biden as the idea of Donald Trump being 215 pounds. Okay, so, and constantly we're like the greatest health that anybody has ever seen. Now, look, I hope that some of the Trump voters are beginning to see with the Epstein files and many other things, Donald Trump doesn't often tell you the truth. So when you look back at his doctor's notes, you see how absurd they are. And look, I don't know. I trying to break the fog of the commentators on the right and the left, and so, or in the case of the online left, I think they were overall pretty good on Biden. It was MSNBC that was a problem on Biden. No, young and dynamic. Yeah, of course. Yeah, he's the best Democrat in the country. Sharp as a tack. Well, we've seen him. Oh, we've seen him off here. He's incredible off here. Come on, right? So, okay. Then you get to his own staffers about Biden's. So don't call him, don't call him. How dare you call him? Now look, guys, I always think about it like, okay, what if it was me, right? And my staffers are flipping out that I might talk to a reporter because I'm brain dead and I'm gonna say something stupid and wrong. I'd be like, what do you guys think I am? You think I don't know what the hell I'm doing at all, and you know way better, and you're really in charge and not me. Well, then why am I doing anything? Why did you tell me to run for re-election? What were we gonna do with the rest of the 3.5 years if we had won? No, the people closest to Joe Biden know he cannot be trusted to have a single conversation. And they re-ran him for president. It's every time you think about it, it makes you physically ill. So screw all of the politicians and all of the leadership and all of the consultants, all the crooks in Washington. And then finally, back to Eleanor Holmes Norton for a second. So Jordan's right, like she doesn't really have a vote, so it's not that relevant, right? Since she's representing DC. And B, she's not that bad a legislator overall in her career, right? But what are we doing here? So there's a second phenomenon that I alluded to in the beginning. And if you don't know any politicians and you're not in DC, which I imagine is most of you, right? Normal people aren't involved with these insiders, right? I have the misfortune of dealing with folks like that on a pretty regular basis. The culture in DC is supernova toxic. And part of that is, once someone's in Congress, they become a demigod. And so like the reporters are like, oh, congressperson, senator, what would you like me to write on your behalf? I write it right away. You're amazing, you're so powerful, I have access to you. I have access. But it's not just that, everyone in Washington. Like if you said, oh, let's go get a meeting with Rashida Tlaib or something. I'm just saying like one of the most personable, relatable Congress people, you might agree or disagree with her, but she's kind of an outsider, right? So I think everybody can acknowledge that. I'm picking like the most outsider person I can think of in Washington. Meeting with Rashida Tlaib. She's a congresswoman. She's like, and again, I don't mean to pick on her and it's a hypothetical, okay? So like, but fill in the blank, minus Ro Khanna. like almost everyone in Congress. And so now if you're the head of a nonprofit special interest organization or a think tank or you're a donor, up right away, then you're also a demigod, right? But otherwise, they view, and I saw somebody from one of the Gulf nations, I've talked about this before, who's very high up in an organization, and he treated people in a binary way. If he thought you were an important person, then he would be very gracious, right? But everyone else was a flat zero. Didn't care about you at all, you weren't really a person. So those Gulf nations run by dictators, very similar culture to Washington, DC. You're either a 1 or a 0. Congress people are ones. So she's 88 and obviously she's like she can't keep doing this, doesn't matter. Congresswoman, we all bow, So that's what, guys, the most important part of this. Eleanor Holmes Norton is nearly irrelevant in this. The reason why she comes up is because they did it with Feinstein. They did it with Biden. They do it all the time. They did it with Mitch McConnell. No, he's not freezing. I saw him freeze. He wouldn't move for 30 seconds. What do you mean he's okay? Of course he's not okay. And the next day, Mitch McConnell comes like bruised face, bruised arm and stuff. Like, no, he's totally fine. Report that he's totally fine. Okay, he's totally fine. So just these guys are a joke. They don't represent us at all. They're just sitting there collecting checks and getting more and more famous and status. It's the Hunger Games. They're in the Capitol and we're in the districts.
Yeah, and there have been multiple votes on razor thin margins in the House that, we're speculating because the votes could have been slightly different if Republican holdouts or flips went the other way, given that 3 of these Democrats who have died this year were still in the House and voting. But I don't know how Democrats can look at that and think, yeah, okay, let's just let 88-year-olds run for re-election. Granted that Eleanor Holmes Norton can't vote, but she's not alone in being older, at greater risk of a health complication or an adverse outcome. But when you have somebody like David Hogg who suggests, hey, let's, as the DNC, push for younger, newer people to get into the fold, he's run out. Like this is the consequences. Who knows if Chip Roy would have remained a holdout on that bill and 3 more Democrats were present to vote, we might have seen that the big beautiful bill die in the House. So I don't know how they can walk away from that and think, yeah, let's just preserve the status quo. Let's not push for newer, younger representation in the House. That's a lesson I think we're going to pay. We're going to pay the price for that for a very long time. And you would think a savvier, more nimble party would be able to adapt, but I guess not.
Yeah, Jordan, last thing is, that's why Biden was allowed to run for so long and got to the point where he handed it off to Kamala Harris at a moment where it was nearly unwinnable. Because in Washington, challenging a politician is as big a heresy and considered like almost immoral. Like it's unthinkable. So when Biden or Jill Biden or his auto pen says, I'm running again, all the Democrats universally bow their heads, minus Dean Phillips, right? They were all like, yes, sir, of course, sir. Who cares that you can't finish a sentence, sir? Who cares that none of us have talked to you in months and months, sometimes years? Who cares that you can't make public appearances and do a simple interview and it's obvious that you're definitely going to lose, right? We don't care. We bow our head to power. And that's what's ruining this country. No, we need to get our democracy back. And we need to have leaders that represent us and are not just widgets that represent the donor class. All right, we got to take a break here, guys. When we come back, there's a judge or a person nominated to be a judge who believes that you shouldn't listen to judges. Of course. All right, we'll tell you about it.
I don't know about you, but I'm going to go to bed.
Let's start again on TYT.com. Mongoose Dragon says, hello everybody, I've been a supporting member of TYT for 37 months, as well as getting news from a few other trusted sources. I am exhausted, and F you AIPAC in Israel. Okay, so Mongoose Dragon, I don't blame you, okay? But at the same time, if we don't know what's going on, we can't have hope in how to fix it. Like, you gotta know what the problem is. You got I remember when my doctors saved my life back when I was 31, and he said, Cenk, what do you think we should do with this terrible condition you seem to have? I was like, I don't know, I thought that's why I came here. He's like, yeah, exactly, we don't know. We have to figure out what it is first. And then after we know what it is, then we'll know how to treat it. And I was like, oh, good thinking. Okay, you'd be shocked at how many doctors didn't do that before he did, okay? And so we're almost doctors here together. We're assessing what the problem is. And then, by the way, through Operation Hope, Rebellion PAC, and other things, and Just Democrats that we did before, then we fight back. And if we lose hope, then we never have Justice Democrats, we never have AOC, Rashida Tlaib, et cetera. Probably, we don't know, right? But certainly you guys helped a lot in making that happen. So anyway, hang in there, brother. Jenks Left Tricep Furious says, my wife's a naturalized citizen who has been a citizen for almost 50 years, and she's scared to go out without me. That's what this dictator and his racist POC sycophants have done to this country. My anger can almost not be contained. Look, I think that the Republicans, if they continue on this path, which they most likely will, Trump could make it a little better, he could make it a lot worse. If they continue on this path, they're looking at an annihilation in the midterms. And so that's it. Then he's lost Congress in his last 2 years. Yeah, he could do executive orders. Yeah, he could be a weirdo, in ignoring the courts, et cetera. But he'll have lost a giant chunk of his power. And that's in a year and a half. And so the price of them being so extreme is that they're going to lose political power. I know people are worried about the 26 elections. Hold on, guys. We haven't seen anything in that direction yet. And remember, a lot of his own voters are in open rebellion. So hang in there, but your concern is enormously justified. Rebel Dragon says, she sounds about Eleanor Holmes Norton, she sounds just like Dianne Feinstein. Here we go again. I thought the same exact thing. In fact, I said it in the middle of the story. Totally agree. Wang Jun said, of course she's gonna seek re-election. What else are these donor-funded dinosaurs going to do? Find a job? Hell no. In that case, it's not about finding a job. She's 88, right? And the donors don't matter that much to her because she's not voting. In her case, no, they can't let go of power. Precious. Eclectic Miscellaneous is loving the chirons for this segment. First, age-old question. Now, call me maybe. LOL. Indeed, LOL, that's the production team doing a terrific job. Next TYT reporter says, why are we still talking about Joe Biden?
I am not going anywhere.
That's what I'm worried about. So no, guys, seriously, it's super important because we have to get it in everybody's heads. Don't trust Democratic leadership. Don't trust the establishment. Don't trust corporate Democrats. They're gonna do the same trick 1,000 times over. They'll find a young Biden next time and they're like, oh, this time we got it figured out. Vote for Buttigieg 2.0, a new and improved robot, and he will do the things that Biden didn't. No, he's not gonna do it either. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Jordan with you guys. I'm just gonna read one comment from Twitch because I feel like I have to. Adiana Vega writes in, thank you, yes, I will take all the credit for Jordan's glow up.
She's the best.
Okay, Schmoopy Papoopy. Okay, that's Jordan's wife, of course. It feels funny saying wife now, but yes, indeed, wife. All right.
It's wild.
Yeah. All right. What do you got for us next, Jordan?
Newly released emails and text messages from a whistleblower further validate claims that one of Trump's top DOJ officials knowingly and deliberately violated a court order around deporting Kilmar Abrego Garcia and other immigrants earlier this year. The messages show increasing alarm among Justice Department lawyers that the administration had in fact defied court orders and that some officials, including a prominent DOJ lawyer brought on by the Trump administration, could face sanctions for misleading the courts. That top DOJ official is Emil Bove, who is currently a nominee to be a federal appeals court judge. Before we get exactly into what exactly was in those emails and text messages, Cenk, do you think this could impact his nomination?
I don't know that the Republicans will vote no on anything, right? So here's a guy who, as you're about to see, basically told his staff to ignore judges' orders. He would now like to be a judge. And the Republicans will almost certainly unanimously say yes.
Wild. It is wild. But let's get into the specifics here. Emails and text messages sent to Congress by former DOJ lawyer Erez Ruveni, who in June filed a complaint against Bove, shed new details and allegations that Bove had floated, giving US courts a big FU during a Justice Department meeting discussing the then planned deportations. Now, for context, Ruveni represented the DOJ in 3 cases related to the Trump administration's crackdown on undocumented immigration and was fired after admitting in court, where he is required to tell the truth under questioning from a judge, that in April, the administration illegally deported Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Salvadoran man residing in Maryland who had a protective court order barring his removal to El Salvador. According to a whistleblower complaint filed by Ruveni and obtained by the New York Times last month, Bove stated during a March meeting that the DOJ might just need to tell the courts to F off if they attempted to interfere with plans to transfer migrants to a foreign prison in El Salvador, known for its human rights abuses. On Thursday, the Senate Judiciary Committee released text messages and emails from earlier this year between Ruveni and a colleague. In text messages with the Justice Department Deputy Director, August Flente, written the day the deportations took place, Ruveni wrote that it was time to find out about the FU. Flente jokingly replied that it had been good working with him and that they were likely saved for today by the fact that Judge James Boasberg is on vacation. In another text exchange made 4 days after the government was accused of deporting the migrants in violation of a court order, Ruveni wrote that, at this point, why don't we just submit an emoji of a middle finger as our filing to the court? So stupid, replied Flente. But when Bove was asked about this during his nomination hearing just a couple weeks ago, this is what he said.
I don't want to disparage that whistleblower in this proceeding, but I also have to address to some extent the allegations. As you noted at the outset, I'm also bound by privileges that the whistleblower did not consider himself bound with in leaking that report to this committee just yesterday. But there are a few things I'd like to say and confirm. I will reiterate, I did not advise any Justice Department attorney to violate court orders. The Deputy Attorney General, as you made clear in your opening remarks, Chairman, has confirmed that the account in that whistleblower complaint is not accurate.
So telling staff to violate court orders, violating court orders, potentially now, Cenk, was this lying to Congress?
Of course it is, but to be fair to that brother, almost everybody lies to Congress when they're getting nominated. Like all the justices are like, politics, political opinions. What name so? Never heard of him. Roe v. Wade. What do you mean Roe v. Wade? Never heard of it. Okay, so they all lie. But anyway, so it is technically a crime. So in this case though, this is I don't know if I could continue to be amazed, but all right, first let me give a slight defense here. So Pam Bondi made an interesting point, to be fair. I know, first one for everything. Anyway, she said, I can't find the Epstein files, even though they were right here on my desk. No, okay. She said, look, we were appealing the case. So how can he be in violation of a court order or encourage people to be in violation of a court order if we're appealing the case? Okay, that's not that bad a point. But then the problem is, in the internal documents, which we now see, they're alluding to him saying, tell the courts, F you. We're not following your orders. So that seems to defeat your earlier point. Okay, so what I'm curious about, Jordan, is, so if this brother gets on the court, which he almost certainly will, I mean, what Republicans are gonna grow a conscience? And when I say Republicans in this context, I mean they're politicians. I don't mean they're voters, because you guys don't get to vote on it no matter what party you're in. The politicians do. So are they gonna grow a conscience like, oh, you're right. You know what, the Trump team really has been ignoring a lot of court orders, and that is dangerous. Maybe we should stop them. I mean, it's not impossible, but I would be shocked, right? But if he wins, then what if lawyers come to him and go, sir, I'm gonna go with your precedents, F you. I'm not gonna listen to any of your orders. Why? You're a judge. And you said earlier that we shouldn't listen to judges. I mean, this is nuts. This is where we are now. I mean, later in the show, we're gonna tell you that Donald Trump appointed a professional troll, an alpha male, to be an ambassador for the country, to a real country. Like, we full idiocracy. So what do you do if you go in this guy's court and he doesn't even believe in the court system or listening to the judges? It's mental.
Yeah, it is. I mean, this is a scenario where the only people who are going to be able to violate court orders, or the only people who are going to be able to, in this case, blatantly lie and tell staff to do this type of stuff without repercussion, are going to be the Republicans. If anybody on the left, any Democrat did this, it would be a major scandal. Democrats, I assume, will try to turn this into one, but like you're saying, Republicans will probably confirm him. And I think what they'll do is they'll justify their doing so with these new trumped up charges on Kilmar Abrego Garcia that they unveiled after it was impossible to ignore. They had to bring him back to the States. So that Pam Bondi press conference, all of these all of the witness statements, all of these people who, I mean, it was everything under the sun that they are accusing him of. Human trafficking across state lines, all these different trips. Just, it's so ridiculous. It feels entirely fabricated, but we'll see as the court process plays out. I think they'll just use that. Well, this is a gang member and he's doing X, Y, and Z and all these heinous things. We had no choice. He was acting on his conscience, and they'll find some way to avoid addressing this claim directly. But as we're seeing here in these emails and texts, this is something that people inside the DOJ knew was wrong when it was happening. It's not about what this person allegedly did before, after, or later, what they charged him with later down the line. It's how you act and uphold the Constitution and respect for our institutions in that moment. And like you're saying, it's ludicrous. This is somebody who is now going to be potentially a judge, but he doesn't have respect for the position to begin with. But as it plays out time and time again, Republicans aren't going to care when it's someone on their side doing it.
Yeah, last two quick things on it. When you look at the internal documents, it's a clown show through and through. They're like, okay, let's prove that he's an MS-13 member or leader. So wait, is he a member or a leader? And what do you mean, let's prove it? Do you have evidence? Because if you have evidence, what you say is, oh, here's evidence that he's a member of MS-13. Not, let's go try to find out if he's a member of MS-13 or a leader of MS-13, things we just invented. And then other guys like, yeah, Tren de Aragua, right? Like, no, that's a Venezuelan gang. Remember, we're trying to make up that he's in the gang from El Salvador. Oh, right, sorry, I forgot which thing we were making up. Okay, and what is it all in service of? Donald Trump's thin skin. Because if he just said, oh, okay, that guy shouldn't have been deported, but the rest of them should have, or whatever he says, right? That's not really true either. But anyway, and here we're going to go get the right guys and we'll return the guys we did wrong. Who cares, right? No, can't. No way. Donald Trump is a god. He's never wrong. And that's so they have to make sure they bury this guy and make up that he's in some gang, Photoshop things. And that idiot Trump, he's like, no, I saw it, I saw it. Do you not understand the concept of Photoshop? Everybody keeps telling you that stupid picture you looked at with the MS-13 on his knuckles is Photoshop. He's like, no, I saw it. It could be Photoshopped and you could still see it. Photoshop is not invisible. Okay, so it's a clown car, total clown car. All right, we are going to miraculously end on time. Okay, hey, don't say it never happened. All right, Jordan, check him out on Rebel headquarters. We appreciate you. We appreciate the glow up. And Eclectic, sorry you didn't get to use your popcorn. Maybe next time. Okay, guys, when we come back, lots of devastating stories. It turns out they really did wait before they helped people in Texas. It's a disaster, literally. And the Epstein rebellion is raging. So we've got updates on that coming up. I went to Kentucky Fried Chicken when I first got my license, like 17 years old or 17, 18, whatever it was. And I'm driving, I think, my dad's Oldsmobile. And I parked it in a place where there was two cars next to me, really tight spot, and a car behind me. I don't even know how I got in there because I'm a terrible driver. Back then I was an even worse driver. And on the roads I'm okay, but in parking spots I have terrible spatial reasoning and I'm a mess. And on my way out, I hit all three cars at once. I broke all records, okay? So I went, as I'm backing out, I went boom, oh, and this side hit that car, this side hit this car, and the back hit the third car, okay? And I got stuck. I didn't know how to get out. Like, I went, okay, for this, and then I'm like, no, and then, right? And then finally I had to stop, go inside the KFC and go, I'm sorry, I hit a bunch of your cars. They're like, what do you mean a bunch of your cars? I'm like, I don't know.
Wow, there's a B?
Yeah, I'm like this, I hit 3 cars. I don't know, so you guys gotta come help me, okay? Okay, so one, my bad, really sorry about that. Okay, number 2, can someone take my car out? Because I don't wanna keep hitting your cars and I'm incapable of taking it out of this spot.
Now baby, move that fat, baby, move that fat.
Hi, I'm Brett Ehrlich with Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. This is Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. Hi, Brett Ehrlich here. According to EPA head Scott Pruitt, climate change is not happening. He cited a meme on Facebook he saw. When pressed to back up this source, he said it must be accurate because the watermark said it was made by a scientist. So, your move, Truth.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to big pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest, timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor or concern for whose toes we might step on or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
You are the media revolution. You are much needed.
TYT, TYT.
The place is like 95% TYT on.
You guys, the Young Turks, which is my
channel, we're getting that message out.
Cenk and the Young Turks do an extraordinarily good job.
No matter what mainstream media says, you have to listen to the Young Turks.
People who support us on the internet, that's what gives us strength. That's what allows anyone who was in there who was undecided to think one side seems to be winning, they seem to have a bigger army. There might be a reason for that. So thank you guys.
Brandy Arguay.
Back on the Young Turks, Jay Huger, Yasmin, and Leah Khan with you guys. She's on Rebel headquarters, you know that. We also have Dawn Whitehead giving a Young Turks membership on YouTube. We appreciate you as always, Dawn. You're the best. All right, Yas, we got a lot of amazing stories. So what do you got first?
Yeah, a lot of good ones tonight. So first up, we have an Iranian woman who is a diehard Trump supporter, and her family, and they're still backing the president even after Trump's ICE goons arrested her and threw her into a detention center, potentially waiting deportation. Cenk, I already know that you have some thoughts here, but let me give you a few details first before we get to you. So Arpaneh Masihi is a 39-year-old wife and mother of four US-born children. And she came to the United States when she was just 3 years old. So this is from the BBC. She had a rough patch many years ago in 2008 when she was convicted of burglary and grand theft and was sentenced to 2 years in prison. An immigration judge revoked her green card, which is a common practice. But because she is a Christian Armenian Iranian, the judge allowed her to remain in the country instead of being deported. Arpaneh explained how a judge had allowed her to stay in the US because of the situation in Iran, as long as she did not commit any other crimes, and as long as she frequently checked in with immigration officials. Her last check-in was in April. But Trump's ICE does not care about any of that, because unlike so many in ICE detention that have no criminal records, Masihi is actually a convicted felon. So now, Cenk, it is hard to believe that someone could still support Trump after being locked up in one of these containments, but she is standing by her man. What do you think?
Yeah, well, so it's over the top absurd for reasons that we're going to explain. But as a strategy, maybe she's onto something. So I want to explain why that might be the case in a little bit as well. But first, get the absurd details of her bootlicking.
Yeah, absolutely. So Masihi has been locked up in the Adelanto immigration detention facility in the Mojave Desert since her arrest in June. But prior to relocating there, she was housed in a federal building in downtown Los Angeles, where she said they were treated like animals. That's a quote. So Arpaneh told the BBC she was held in a freezing, brightly lit room with 28 other women for 3 days. They survived on snacks and 1 bottle of water a day, she says. The women were huddling together for warmth and sleeping on the floor. But despite currently being held in a facility known for its harsh prison-like conditions, she is still holding out hope that the Trump administration will spare her. So here's what she had to say. She said, "He's doing the right thing because lots of these people don't deserve to be here. I will support him until the day I die. He's making America great again." And of course, whenever she says a lot of people don't deserve to be here, she's not talking about the prison that she's in. She's talking about immigrants who don't deserve to be in our country. But she had more to say. She said, "I'm not deportable to any country. I have 4 citizen children. I own a business. I own a property. I own cars. I haven't done anything wrong in so many years." Okay, the delulu, as the kids say, is real though, because that's not gonna stop the Trump administration. A criminal record is a criminal record, right? That's what these Trump supporters want. They want these criminals locked up and deported, and she unfortunately fits that exact definition. So the BBC report notes that in February, a group of Iranian Christians who illegally entered the country were deported, but they were sent to Panama instead of Iran. And she is not the only one who is brainwashed, by the way. Her husband is also an avid Trump supporter. And guess what? You know what? You'll never guess, but he is blaming Joe Biden for all of this. This is what her husband said. He said, "I don't blame Trump, I blame Biden. It's his doing for open borders, but I believe in the system and all the good people will be released and the ones that are bad will be sent back. Trump is not trying to do anything bad. We understand what he's doing. He wants the best for the country." Cenk, I'm just tired of trying to unpack that line of logic, or like maybe I should say that line of illogic, the blaming of Joe Biden for things that this Trump administration is doing now. It feels like it feels like clinical is that's the word I'm gonna go with. But until those people see Donald Trump himself arresting people and personally escorting them to these prisons in El Salvador, they're always just gonna assume that he's somehow separate from all of the really actually bad things that his administration is doing in his name. It's like, how dare they?
Yeah, there's layers of insanity here. So first off, of all the people being deported, she has one of the worst cases. You know what she was convicted of? Burglary and grand theft. Those are some serious crimes. So now I'll defend her anyway, because we're supposed to do the right thing, and so we will. Because hey, if a judge says that she shouldn't be deported back to Iran, then the judge said it. It's over. She shouldn't be in that holding cell. She shouldn't be in detention. She shouldn't be any of that. She shouldn't be deported because the judge already said she shouldn't be deported, and I'm done with it. Okay, now we're on her side, even though we massively disagree with her politically, because we care about doing the right thing and being fair. But this is one of those where it's super hard not to go, ha ha. Like I tell you guys, don't do it, right? But even I want to do it on this one. Because think about it, guys. She's saying the conditions here are terrible. And she thinks everyone else in that cell deserves it, but her. Even though I would wager to guess that she's the most significant criminal in that holding area. Like, I don't know who else is there. Maybe they have some gang members or whatever, right? But grand theft and burglary are no joke. Those are massive crimes. So, but this entitlement complex is unreal with some of these deluded folks. So she's like, I belong here. I have cars. Oh, wow. Oh, do you? Does she not think that anyone else here who's an immigrant has cars? Oh, I have property. In other words, I have a little bit of money, so I should be above you. And my immigration status is irrelevant. The fact that I'm a convicted felon is irrelevant. Nothing's relevant, okay? Oh, I am great, and all the other people here are scum. You should send them away, but only keep me. Maybe if you get lucky and we fight hard enough for you, maybe you'll get to stay, right? And you should stay. But it's not because of your attitude, which is like the very worst I have seen. So, and then her delusional. I mean, clinical is a good word for it. That's our opinion, but somebody get him some mental health, man. It's Biden's fault? How could it be Biden's fault? How can Biden be like, oh, he's for open borders and he let all these dirty immigrants that are criminals in, like my wife. And then Trump is kicking them out. And so thank God that Trump is kicking out my wife. I mean, but it's Biden's fault for kicking her out. He's not even trying. Like, it's just, all right, so what is the thing that I mentioned earlier where like maybe it's a decent strategy, okay? So because all of that is mental, right? So the strategy, I don't know that they have one. I don't think they do. I think they're actually that delusional, right? But they're stumbling onto a decent strategy because the only way to get out of any of these impossible, like Kafka-esque, bureaucratic legal nightmares they put you in is to kiss Donald Trump's ass. So she and her husband are going, oh my God, even if you take my wife away, maybe in his case, particularly if you take my wife away, but anyway, like, oh, we love you no matter what. Come, you know what? I'm so glad you stuffed me into a prison I don't belong in the middle of the Mojave Desert. And I'm suffering there with these other terrible people. Thank God, Donald Trump, you're the greatest. Trump might look at that and go, all right, pretty good. I let that one stay. Because he's not making rational decisions. And like the number one to get something out of Donald Trump, everybody knows, is his appeal to his ego, because he is a thin-skinned little bitch. So like, if you criticize him even 1%, he's like, that's it, I don't care. I saw Photoshop, MS-13, I saw it, right? But if you're an actual criminal, the kind he says that we should deport, but you go, he might be like, oh, I like her. Okay, we keep her. But maybe pick up her husband and send him to Panama. Because it doesn't matter, we're not following the law anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so funny because I think you might actually be onto something, and it's just so ridiculous. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And while you were talking, I was trying to like piece together her husband's logic. So it starts where Joe Biden let all these immigrants in. So Donald Trump, now he has to respond. He has to lock up all these illegal immigrants, and his wife just happened to get swept up in all of the chaos and all the madness of all of that. But ultimately, Trump didn't have a choice, and it doesn't matter anyway, because she's not gonna be one of the ones deported, just the criminals, not his wife, but the criminals who don't deserve to be in this country. And what I thought was interesting too, was not just her claims that because she has property and because she has cars and because she has a business, she's a working woman. Those are all the reasons why in her head she can't get deported, but also because she has 4 US born children, right? And she says that should tether her here, even though we've seen that this administration has no problem separating children from their parents, not even grown children, right? We're talking babies. And we also know that this administration is actively trying to get rid of birthright citizenship, which is what her children have. So none of it makes any sense. You have to wonder, is this a question of she's just not completely, totally informed about what Trump is actually trying to do and how that would affect her? Or is it really just some form of delusion where people are so unable to look inward and to be any kind of introspective where they would say, you know what, that's me, that aligns with me, I'm that person. And speaking of like the immigrant community, this is something that I've seen with a lot of immigrants that I know personally. Once they're on this side of the border, once they're in this country, wherever they came from, not just from South America or Central America, but once they're here, they do kind of forget about everybody else back home, and it's strange because it is almost like a virtuous thing that I was able to get here, I deserve to be here, now everybody else no. Right? It's almost like the elitism, the privilege of being here, like that's for me because I'm a good person and because I deserve this, everybody else no. And they, like, it's hard to imagine, but they really do. Like, I've seen it personally. They don't have a whole lot of qualms about, closing that gate behind them and just coming here and saying, but I'm not them anymore, I'm this. The thing that they're missing is that they are an immigrant still. They always will be. And unfortunately, people who are members of the Trump administration, they will never see them as fully American because that is how their brains work. So
yeah, last couple of things
good luck
here.
To her.
Yeah, last couple of things. First of all, great point on US citizen kids. Mahmoud Halil has a kid who's a US citizen, and he was arrested and they tried to deport him for criticizing Israel, which is not in any way illegal. She did grand theft. Okay, Abrego Garcia has kids who are US citizens. That doesn't matter at all. These people are totally delusional. They think Daddy Trump's gonna rescue them. But even if he does, even if he ultimately goes, oh, nice job of kissing my ass in the left, the right, and the middle, right? Okay, you're free to go. But he still imprisoned you unjustly for all that time. So like, how is that part of Daddy's plan? And then finally, like I used to joke around about, for hardcore MAGA, if Trump came and screwed their wife, they'd thank him. And this guy kind of did. Trump came and screwed his wife, and he said thank you. So hashtag Cenk was right. All right, guys, we got to take a break. When we come back, it turns out FEMA did massively fail in Texas, and then we still have the MAGA rebellion on Epstein coming up as well. We'll be right back.
I don't care about you, I just want your vote.
right, let's go to Super Chat. Constantine Kavira says, Constantine, a Super Chat in support of the Western swing music during the break. So that one's for you, Bart. Nice job. R. Stone says, that dude isn't slick. He's filing divorce papers while his wife is detained. Red Cap Gang, logic not included or required. Okay, well, maybe he is being logical to your point. He's just dirty. He's like, oh, you took my wife into detention. Oh, I am so upset with you, Donald Trump. Okay, I don't know him though. The Cuckoo's Nest says, JD Schulten, 2 days ago, you did not read my Super Chat, now referring to me, but I hope you shared it with Schulten. He needs to change his website, otherwise say goodbye to grassroots money. He needs an issues tab with detailed policies. So, brother, I didn't see that the day that I was interviewing JD Schulten, but I hear you now. And you know what? Yeah, we'll reach out to him, see if we can put issues on his policies or policies on his website. That's a fair request. And different campaigns do things at different times. So one step at a time, he just announced really recently. But I love that you care about the policies. And by the way, he signed on to the Populist Plank, so populistplank.com. He agrees very much with those 6 policies at a minimum, so you already have some sense of what he believes there. All right, and he ran before too. He's a super solid progressive. Psychonautic guy says, Cenk, yesterday there was a discussion about your willingness to talk to bigots. Daryl Davis, a black man, has convinced more than 20 former Klan members to leave the Klan. Persuasion is a part of the solution. Thank you, brother. Thank you for writing in and saying that, and that's a great example of it. Imagine if the civil rights movement was like, oh my God, we don't want to talk to those racist white Americans in the South. We give up. You know what? Don't talk to them. Don't platform them. Where would we have been then? So thank God that they were much wiser than all of us. Thomas Daniel says, I'm currently 211 pounds and look way skinnier than Trump. I even stepped on the scale, but either said 101 or LOL. I couldn't decide which. I need a new scale. Yeah, I mean, guys, it's not close. 215 is a joke. I mean, he could be, anyway, I don't need to speculate on what it is, but bare minimum 50 pounds on top of that. But once I think he weighed in at 275 and then he magically lost 60 pounds overnight or whatever insane thing he's making up today. Anyway, 00083 says about Israel, with friends or allies like these, I mean, then truer words have never been spoken. I mean, how many wars has Israel gotten us into? How much money have they taken from us? How much trouble have they gotten us into? How much we needlessly are in a battle with 2 billion Muslims across the world because Israel wanted to take more Muslim land. So Jonah Morton says, so now I'm on a 3rd list, great. We really need a way to counter these illegal blacklisting lists. Should be illegal to do this in the US, referring to the Canary Mission list of anyone who disagrees with Israel. They put up on a list on college campuses, etc. We'll be back. Back on TYT, Cenk and Yaz with you guys. Yaz, what's next?
Yeah, we have some updates out of Texas. Let's take a look at this.
Because as the sun rises over central Texas today, residents are still grieving the loss of at least 120 people across 6 counties after storms surged through the region nearly 1 week ago. A desperate search by air, water, land, and even horseback continues at this hour, as officials say more than 170 people are still missing.
So as the death toll continues to rise following the deadly floods that hit central Texas almost a week ago, new reporting reveals the federal response to the flooding was significantly delayed due to Kristi Noem's new FEMA policies. So Cenk, Waz and I talked about this story a little bit yesterday, specifically about how Governor Abbott doesn't want to investigate what went wrong where with the flood and the response to it, because according to him, that is something that only losers do. But this part of the story broke right before we went live yesterday. So it turns out that as much as Abbott is insisting that no one is to blame for the inadequate response to the victims and the situation, there does seem to be some blame to be had. What do you think?
Yeah, so no matter which political party, whenever a politician says, we shouldn't investigate this, that means you should investigate it. He's definitely trying to hide something. And look at that. When there was wildfires in California, they were like, Karen Bass, Gavin Newsom, we need investigations. This is incompetent. It happens in Texas. They're like, shh, no investigations. Don't look into it at all. Well, it turns out because the minute you look into it, you find out, oh my God, it was Kristi Noem's fault. So I was not inclined in that direction. That's why I'm actually a bit shocked at how brazen and over the top this story is, because it was definitely her fault that they didn't get there in time. They're gonna ruin FEMA. It was one of the, I know that you heard, like if you're on the right, you heard propaganda about FEMA. No, it was one of the few things in government that was working. So watch how they're destroying it now.
Yeah, the story really is egregious. So according to 4 FEMA officials who spoke to CNN yesterday, FEMA was not allowed to deploy their urban search and rescue crews until they got the sign off from Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, which did not come until Monday, which was 72 hours after the flooding began. So last month, CNN reported that Kristi Noem enacted a new rule stating that every contract and grant over $100,000 across her department must get her personal sign off in order for any of those funds to be released. So this is from CNN, says officials inside FEMA warned the new approval process could severely disrupt the distribution of emergency funds during natural disasters. With hurricane season already underway, multiple sources told CNN that Noem's policy threatens to bog down FEMA's rapid response efforts and could choke off critical aid when every second counts. One FEMA official directly involved in disaster response called the policy a dramatic and unprecedented overreach and contends that Noem is effectively preventing the department from functioning. So they also added that this will hurt nonprofits, states, and small towns. Massive delays feel inevitable. So for FEMA, disaster response can regularly soar into the billions due to their contracts with crews who are working on the ground. So a $100,000 threshold is pennies, it's peanuts. They can hit that threshold very, very quickly once a disaster has occurred. And it's no surprise that they were right about all of these delays. So for example, as central Texas towns were submerged in rising waters, FEMA officials realized they could not pre-position urban search and rescue crews from a network of teams stationed regionally across the country. And additionally, Texas did request aerial imagery from FEMA to aid search and rescue operations, a source told CNN, but that was delayed as it awaited Noem's approval for the necessary contract. FEMA staff have also been answering phones at a disaster call center where, according to one agency official, callers have faced longer wait times as the agency awaited Noem's approval for a contract to bring in additional support staff. By Monday night, only 86 FEMA staffers had been deployed. By Tuesday, it expanded to 311, still just a fraction of the typical disaster response that they would have deployed. One longtime FEMA official had this to say. They said, we were operating under a clear set of guidance, lean forward, be prepared, anticipate what the state needs, and be ready to deliver it. That is not as clear of an intent for us at the moment. And following the report, Tricia McLaughlin, a DHS spokesperson, told CNN that Noem did not need to authorize additional FEMA resources initially because the department used other DHS search and rescue assets. She added that over time, as a need for FEMA resources arose, those requests received Noem's approval. She said FEMA is shifting from bloated, DC-centric dead weight to a lean, deployable disaster force that empowers state actors to provide relief for their citizens. The old processes are being replaced because they failed Americans in real emergencies for decades. This isn't exactly the instance where that point is being proven. So Kristi Noem herself did not deny the fact that she did delay the process. Take a look.
CNN is basically got a report accusing you of slowing the process.
Yeah.
Would you like to respond to that?
Well, there you go. Fake news. CNN again is absolutely trash what they are doing by saying that, because our Coast Guard, our Border Patrol, BORTAC teams were there immediately. Every single thing I was on, they asked for, we were there. The governor and the emergency management director, Nim Kidd, are fantastic, and nobody there has said anything about that they didn't get everything that they wanted immediately or that they needed. The fact that CNN is continuing to be political and push out fake information and false information and lies is not shocking, but it's a disservice to the country. It's a real disservice to the country because people start to mistrust anything that comes out then over the news. And then, well, that's true. Yeah, but they just don't trust anybody anymore.
All right, well, this comes after Noem actually called for the entire agency to be eliminated yet again. It says on Wednesday, Noem called for the agency to be eliminated and remade after telling reporters the previous day, we as a federal government don't manage these disasters, the state does. That's not true. We come in and support them, and that's exactly what we did in this situation. It's also not really true. Luckily, Texas was able to handle the situation for the most part, despite the delay from FEMA. So Texas, which has one of the most robust emergency management systems in the country, has managed this disaster largely on its own and leaned on its state and local search and rescue teams in the early hours of the disaster. More than 2,100 people have been deployed across 20 state agencies, according to Governor Greg Abbott's office. So Cenk, people were actively dying as all this was going on. This is completely unacceptable. And what's worse is that FEMA was trying to act. They were trying to do their jobs and they found that they were being kneecapped. They just could not do the things that they needed to do, the things that they knew they needed to do. When you have a situation where there is an acute weather situation, I think the river rose 20 feet in under an hour. That is unbelievable. You don't have time for bureaucracy. Every minute counts. And I thought that this administration wanted to get rid of needless bureaucracy, but yet here we are with a situation where they just can't act for some kind of administrative reason, a reason that was not there just a little while ago. But now Noem is trying to spin this as like this is a states versus Fed issue, which is par for the course with this administration. Because I feel like if it was up to them, the federal government would essentially just be a bank and a military. Like her lack of accountability here is not surprising. But Cenk, what do you think about her overall response to this? Not just her lack of accountability, but also like the state versus federal government issue.
Yeah, so the river rises 20 feet in an hour. Then they have to wait 71 more hours for her to approve any spending over $100,000. You guys grasp how stupid that rule is? They spend billions in these FEMA recovery situations, especially one as severe as this where over 120 people died. $100,000 for you and I is a lot of money, but for FEMA, you can't do anything with $100,000. That means she has to basically okay every single expenditure, and it took her 3 interminable days. It's unbelievable how long that is in an emergency. It's just the worst judgment you've seen, except there's one other thing that Noem did in her life that makes you go, oh, right, she's the one with the terrible judgment. I'll go back to that in a second. But guys, so the Republicans have been doing propaganda against FEMA, and with Kristi Noem here, you're seeing that propaganda doesn't make any sense. It clashes with the other things that they're saying. So what happened was, whenever there's some sort of disaster in red states over the last, this is a recent phenomenon around when Trump started, around 10 years ago or so. When it's in a red state, Ted Cruz comes back from vacation 3 days later and they say, well, that's it, we need all the money has to come to us right away, FEMA, right? And then in North Carolina, for example, they started this thing about how FEMA is gonna come to your house and do something bad to you. And then a couple of FEMA people were like, I don't know if I wanna go to Trump houses. They're all riled up to like, they're angry at us. I don't know if they're gonna attack us, etc. And they decide not to go to a couple houses. That terrible decision. That's your job, is to go help those people, right? But then they take those microscopic cases and they're like, that's it, FEMA's bad. Abolish FEMA. And especially if it's in a blue state, a disaster happened. Ted Cruz then comes out and says, no way, not gonna fund it. No way. Tommy Tuberville comes out and goes, blue states, who cares? Abolish FEMA. And Noem now is talking about abolish FEMA. You're in charge of FEMA. And how can you say, FEMA, under me, FEMA is perfectly responsive and awesome and terrific, and that's why we should get rid of it. You're not even trying to make sense. I mean, look, I was against defund the police. I was against abolish ICE. Those are slogans that make you think that there's gonna be no border control or no cops. Now the Republicans are doing abolish FEMA. And by the way, they're literally doing it. Those are like, hey, we should reduce funding and give it to another organization, et cetera, et cetera. This is no. Not only do we think we should abolish FEMA, if you're in Texas and 120 of you died, I'm gonna wait 72 hours before I let them spend $1 on you, because I don't really care about you guys. Why do they even wanna abolish FEMA? It's like, so yeah, and it's had some terrible moments like Hurricane Katrina, et cetera. But overall, there's a lot of emergencies these days, natural disasters, partly because of climate change. And in my estimation, and believe me, I mean, if you watch the Young Turks at all, I criticize a lot of government actions, right? But FEMA's been pretty good. They get to the areas relatively quickly, normally. They get people help right away. It's one of the few things in government that actually works. Not perfectly, but pretty good, right? So why did the Republicans even start an attack on FEMA? Because it only helps the average American. It doesn't help any executives at all. No corporate CEO is gonna get rich off of FEMA. No one has any special interest involved. FEMA doesn't have any lobbyists. It usually helps poor and middle class people whose houses have been wiped out through a natural disaster. The oil companies don't even like it. They don't like this talk of climate change and all that stuff, right? So to the average American, abolish FEMA. They didn't even donate to us. They're not even a corporation, these people in Texas. So this is stupid and disgusting. So finally, are we surprised that the woman who thought, not only will I murder a dog in a gravel pit, but I'll put it in my book so everyone knows about it, had the infinitely bad judgment to say, hey, you know what? In the case of emergencies, you should wait 72 hours for me to authorize the tiniest little spending while everyone is dying. No, not at all surprising. Clown through and through.
Yeah, I really don't understand that 72-hour response. Like, this thing was in the news way before that, right? I think the flooding started Thursday or Friday, and it was in the news the next day, right? We knew what was going on, especially here in Texas. We knew what was going on. There's no excuse for it. There's no reason why something like this would take 72 hours, especially as you spelled out. It is such a small amount of money. Why does that need to even be approved? And if you see that there's flooding in Texas, just say, yeah, have the money, whatever. Also, you're right. This is hurricane season. We are here in Texas, all on the Gulf Coast, all on the East Coast, even on the West Coast now. You guys are getting more hurricanes than before. This is not great timing for any of this. There's a lot of concern, especially I know here in Houston, it's a big concern that we're just not gonna get the money or the aid that we need if and when these things happen, and these things inevitably will happen. It's really just a matter of time as to when something's gonna hit. And in the past, yeah, FEMA has been there to help people out whenever there's times of crisis. It's like what you said, right? It's never perfect, right? But a lot of times it is the thing that gets people through. It is the thing that gets the city through. And in Texas, we do have what they say one of the most robust emergency response systems in the country. That is because we need it, right? We have a lot of weird weather here in Texas, but at the same time, we're not the federal government. We don't have billions and billions of dollars to spend on, if a hurricane hits, and that is how much it costs. I think for Hurricane Harvey, it was over $100 billion that it cost in recovery. Also, on that note, they also seem very hesitant to install any kind of preventative things that would be a lot cheaper, but you can't justify that cost because, $100,000, let's just say as an example, let's go with $1 million, right? $1 million of preventative money just feels like money you don't have to pay because there's no acute need for it. But a hurricane comes, then it costs $125 billion. I don't know, the numbers don't really make sense to me there. Also in Kerr County, we did hear that there were calls from from local officials in that area who were saying we need to do something about our emergency response and our flood response system because it is wildly obsolete or non-existent, and that is one of the most flood-prone areas in the entire state. And they never got the funding for it, and now we had this disaster happen, and they were unable to respond the way they might have been able to. Again, it is hard to point fingers because this thing happens so rapidly. It's very hard to wrap your head around. And I saw a video of the river, and it's just in my head, and just how quickly the water was rising. And you have to do everything you can in advance to prevent the absolute worst from happening. And that's just simply not what we saw here today or last week.
Last word goes to one of our members. Avenger Dragon 89 wrote in on Twitch. My dad died when he saved 4 people when a creek flooded. Search and rescue was likely near $100,000 for him. Well, now you got to wait 3 days. The river flooded right away, as Yaz is telling you. But then to wait 72 hours to authorize any kind of spending it's just nuts, totally nuts. All right, we'll be right back, guys. Let's go to Super Chat first. Mikey 3343 says, Cenk, breaking FEMA is the point. Once FEMA becomes a total failure, they can privatize disaster relief. Mikey, that's an excellent point. And I should have thought of that. You're right, smartest audience in the world. Yeah, watch. We're all gonna do hashtag Mikey was right. When the Trump administration at some point offers up the solution of privatizing FEMA. So that's next. Talia writes in, I was on my deck and hear some familiar voices from my neighbor's house. Turns out he's a huge TYT fan. His words, they tell it like it is. Big facts. Freaking love all of you. Well, we love you back, that's awesome. And I love that you and your neighbor have something to bond over now. Go fly the colors. Go grab a TYT shirt from shoptyt.com. And that way, by the way, these days, in the old days, it was a little bit like, oh, hey, if I'm in a red state and I wear a Young Turks or TYT shirt, could be an issue. These days, no, a lot of people think we're the, most open-minded, most honest show. So you're gonna get a good amount of love no matter where you live now. So fly the colors proud. Boys for Life writes, and the Supreme Court seems fed up with Trump's antics. Honestly, they should be the ones to step in, impeach him, and end his corrupt administration for good. On top, I swear I saw a heat wave on my way home. So of course, Supreme Court can't impeach him, that's Congress. But there's a lot of things that they could do, but will they? No. But it would be very lucky if they just keep the Constitution in one piece by the time Trump leaves. Then I'll be like, okay, good enough, they held. Any kind of rule of law preserved, right? But in terms of consequences for Trump, that would be shocking. Alison Holt says, Cenk is definitely on the list, referring to the Canary Mission type of lists where they track people who criticize Israel. And she adds, that's why we love him. Appreciate it. Yeah, if your name was on an IDF bomb, you're probably on a list somewhere. RK writes in, when did the Republican Party become such an avid defender of Jewish people? Wasn't Kanye on a tear and they all, Donald Trump included, loved it? The money from Israel is gaining way too much power. So RK, remember, of course, to your point, they don't love Jewish people. This isn't about anti-Semitism. Yeah, he had Nick Fuentes and Kanye West over for dinner. And he just called bankers Shylocks. I mean, he's done a million things that in the past would have been considered massively anti-Semitic, right? No, and as we shared you in that story, those organizations oftentimes target Jewish Americans. This has nothing to do with religion. It's all a protection racket for Israel, a foreign government. On Twitch, Microgram says, these people are so rich in protecting their little bubble by endless assistance, they're completely out of touch with reality, referring to the people in DC, and that is definitely true. Compass 1981 says in TYT.com, I agree with Anna. Why exactly do we pay federal tax dollars? The federal government does nothing for us. Our tax dollars go to Israel, the military-industrial complex, and billionaires. That is depressingly true, and that's among the things we have to fix. Back on TYT, Cenk and Yaz with you guys. I'm going to read a couple more member comments in the bonus episode because there's an Irish member who wants to say something to Yaz that I want to read. There's someone that has a hilarious rumor about Rachel Maddow, but I will read one comment right now. Burrito Bandito writes in, you can't deport me. I have a federal library card and own property, a bicycle, but still it's mine. I'm the owner.
Still counts.
I love that. That was really funny, Burrito.
Take that all the way to the detention center.
Hey,
all right,
you know
so
what?
we have some.
No, hold on. This is important. Okay. Burrito Bandito. I laughed out loud. It looked like Yaz did. $100 Blue Apron gift card. You're a member, so just email rewards@tyt.com. Members, when they make great points or get us to laugh, we give them a Blue Apron gift card. It's $100, so God bless, and you earned it. Appreciate it. I wish I could give it away to everybody. All right, now let's do more news.
All right, we have some Epstein updates, sort of. Let's roll the tape.
You saw what happened with Epstein. You get your hopes up and then all of a sudden, poof, everything disappears. All these things always come across and then they just disappear. And it's very frustrating for the American people. Epstein. Yeah, I mean, I just said Epstein. It's like, where did this guy go? Where did that whole case go? Where did all the files go? They just went nowhere? No one even believes that.
Well, last night, Jesse Waters hit the Trump administration for promising information on the Jeffrey Epstein case, only to completely U-turn. And he is not the only one on Fox News who is speaking out. But Cenk, Trump has upset his base before, but they always just come back with, oh, he's smarter than all of us. He knows what he's doing, and we're all too dumb to even imagine what he's really working on. And then the conspiracy theories come or they just stop talking about it like it never happened. So do you think, Cenk, that this is the start of a broader pushback against Trump, or is this gonna just fizzle out like it always does?
No, definitely the start of a bigger thing. So there's two different groups here, actually three different groups. So there's the Trump voters who are largely independents, they're not MAGA, and those guys are gone. We're gonna show you a whole bunch of podcasters like that in a second. And there's even more. We didn't get a chance to give you all of it. Like Andrew Schultz going nuts today. I'm done with him. This is everything that I was voting against. And then there's the hardcore MAGA guys. And then the third group is the MAGA influencers, right? So will the MAGA influencers go right back to Trump like Jesse Waters and Steve Bannon that you're gonna see in a second? Of course they will, right? Will he lose a lot of the independent voters? Yes, definitely. And has this actually cut into MAGA itself, the voters? Yes, yes. Of all the things that have ever happened, this is the one they are the most mad about, and it's not close. If you're out there and people are telling you that MAGA's fake and in terms of their anger towards Epstein or whatever, they don't know what they're talking about. No, MAGA is furious about this, let alone the independent voters. So, but their influencers are a different story. But even, and then what I want to talk about, Yaz, after you show all the clips of them doing it, is why are they saying this when we know those particular guys are going to go back to Trump?
Yeah, and we do. We have a lot of clips, so let's hear it directly from them. So last night, Laura Ingraham had some very tepid criticism for Attorney General Pam Bondi. Here's that clip.
I mean, I think this all adds to the swirl of a bit of confusion about this and doubt. And again, the government only, I think, engenders trust among the American people with full transparency. So when Pam Bondi, and everyone knows how much I like Pam Bondi, I like her a lot. But when she says, well, those are basically never gonna see the light of day. Well, who, was it downloaded child porn? Or were there individuals engaged in acts with children? That's the question, I think. And unless either of you know what the definitive answer is, I don't know.
All right, so meanwhile on Newsmax, host Rob Schmidt stated that he does not believe Trump is in the Epstein files. Don't know how he knows that. Charlie Kirk agreed with that take, but he did have some criticism for the Trump administration. So let's watch.
We've known President Trump as a politician. We've known Donald Trump as a politician for almost 10 years now, right? And it's, the one thing that's been true this whole time is that he hasn't been beholden to anything. I mean, that's what's just so, appealing about him, is that he is what he is, and he's a flawed person, but nobody controls him. Nobody owns him. No special interest can control him. So in my mind, the first thing that I run to when I hear, and you're getting this from everybody in MAGA world. I mean, X is exploding with people very angry at the administration, very angry at the president. It's just like he's gone this far without being controlled by anything. To me, it seems almost surreal to believe that this man is now all of a sudden beholden to whatever it is that's trying to suppress a potential client list for Jeffrey Epstein. It just doesn't seem like he would do that.
And I have not engaged in that rhetoric, as you know, Rob. But I do want to be very clear that the transparency advocates that are younger in nature, they have been very confused. And it's left me a little profoundly confused by just some of the administration officials that told us that there was going to be this big reveal, Rob. And then we didn't quite get that. And then we're told that information doesn't exist.
All right, so now Newsmax host Rob Finnerty went further. He suggested that the Trump administration's investigation into former FBI Director James Comey and former CIA Director John Brennan is actually a smokescreen to distract from the Epstein files. So we're already tiptoeing into conspiracy territory. Here's that clip.
Fast forward to tonight, and it brings us no joy to connect these dots, but it doesn't stop there. Suddenly, just hours after the Sunday night Epstein news dump, the Department of Justice, the same Department of Justice, announced they've opened up an investigation into former FBI Director James Comey and former CIA Director John Brennan. And normally we'd be excited about that news. We would welcome this news. These are two people we think should be held accountable. But the timing, it's almost like the Justice Department doesn't want us talking about Jeffrey Epstein anymore. At least that's what it feels like, doesn't it?
It does. And then we've got Tim Pool, who hammered the Trump administration for their inconsistent messaging around the issue. However, he is also stating that the Trump administration is being somehow manipulated by some higher power. And also the Democrats already hid all of the Epstein-related evidence. So here's that clip.
The big point of the story is Trump saying, well, Joe, you're talking about this still. Why are you talking about it? Because you campaigned on releasing the files and you've been in office for a few months. So we're asking you, what's up?
That's the most evasive that I've seen the president.
Oh yeah, but you know what offends me the most? How bad they are at this. Yeah. That's what my only conclusion is. They're intentionally making it seem like a cover up, because how are they so bad? I talked to Mike Cernovich today because he's the one who blew this whole thing open, him and the Miami Herald. And he said that he thinks that there is some kind of, what did he call it? I think he called it a super system, I'm not sure. A system above the government that terrified Dan Bongino. He said he looked terrified in that interview when he said he killed himself. And he didn't seem like himself. I don't know. I trust Cash and Dan. Cash and Dan are being largely discredited as well as Pam Bondi. So I have no idea what this is or what's really going on. I think the best estimate, the best estimate is, I think Cernovich was saying this. What do you think they were doing the past several years? The reason there's no evidence is not that Pam and Cash and Dan are covering it up. It's that the Democrats covered it up a long time ago.
Okay, so last night, Republican Representative Tim Burchett also stated that the Biden administration buried the evidence. Last one.
I think the files existed at one time. I think they were destroyed in the previous administration. And I think if they'd ever had anything on Trump, it would have been out day one. Agreed. Under the Biden administration. And I think there's some very prominent people. There's Hollywood people, but I think there's world leaders too. And would it have caused economic disruption around the globe? Maybe, but I don't really care.
All right, so that's all I've got. Cenk, I think you have more, but like this almost feels lazy at this point, how everything is just always about Joe Biden. It always comes back to him. Joe Biden, who's currently just like sitting somewhere living his life, and he's getting blamed for all these things. But he's just an easy target or a fall guy for them, because if you just blame something on Joe Biden, then Trump supporters, they just accept that. They're like, yeah, probably sounds plausible. And then it's like they just stop listening or stop thinking. They just turn their brains off. They're like, oh no, probably Biden.
Yeah, so I figured out what they're gonna land on as the excuse, but I want you guys all to remember how much they were flailing before they came up with the excuse in the middle of the controversy. And I'm gonna tell you why all the hosts are even saying the things that they are against Trump. Because you saw there Jesse Waters, Laura Ingraham, I got Steve Bannon coming up, Glenn Beck coming up, And Rob Finnerty with his thing about, oh my God, the Justice Department is trying to distract us from the Epstein files. That's Trump's Justice Department that Newsmax is saying is pulling off a conspiracy to distract us. So these are wild times. And so, look, I said they'd break from Trump. I mean, this is pretty spectacular. If I had said that they were going to break this much with all the Fox hosts and the Newsmax hosts and Steve Bannon, et cetera, people would be like, you're crazy. Now, they already said I was crazy. I didn't even predict anything this large. And so in terms of them scrambling back, guys, look, think about it this way, right? What's a reasonable expectation? Our reasonable expectation is that when people see this, a good number of Trump voters who are closer to the independents go, okay, I get it. Trump's a con man. He's just another one of these huckster politicians we've seen our whole life, et cetera. They're finally gonna come to that realization, which is a very important realization, right? But if you're a Democrat and you knew how old Joe Biden was and how bad a shape he was in, would you have voted for Trump? You could be honest about that. So when you're asking MAGA guys to vote for Democrats or vote against Trump, that's a giant ask, right? That's not gonna happen in the first 6 months, no matter how mad they are at him about anything. But look at what's happening here, guys. You think the Fox News guys wanna speak out against him? Charlie Kirk wants to speak out against Trump? No, the actual voters are pushing them. Did you hear what Charlie Kirk said? The answer is always buried in their statements. Kirk said, well, there's a lot of these younger voters, they're very surprised. They don't know what's going on. Yeah, because the older voters got propaganda from Fox News and other outlets. And they're like, Donald Trump is the greatest no matter what, right? The younger voters are getting their information from online, and they're hearing Rogan, Andrew Schultz, and others going, hey, Theo Vaughn, Tim Dillon, us, whoever else going, I think he might be full of crap. And then Epstein thing happens, and we're like, whoa, what is this? What is this? And they're not wedded, and they didn't get fully brainwashed. So they're like, yeah, I don't know about this, man. This isn't what I bargained for at all. So that's why Charlie Kirk and the others are in a panic. No. I mean, like, it's a problem, it's a problem. We acknowledge it's a problem. Otherwise, they're gonna get their heads taken off by their own audience. We showed it to you last night, but with Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro's audience is like eviscerating him for trying to make, light of the Epstein thing. Go, oh, what's the big deal? It's not a big deal, right? No, it's a big deal. And the reason it's a big deal, guys, is because it's not just about Epstein, which is already bad enough. It's that, as they said there, they really thought that Donald Trump was different, that nobody owned him, nobody controlled him, that he wasn't the establishment, he wasn't a normal politician, he wasn't among the elites, and he was finally gonna hold the elites and the establishment accountable. And so when he comes in and does the same exact thing that they did, that's why they're crestfallen. And so, and what's driving me crazy is that they don't remember he already had 4 years. He already had a first term and he didn't release any of the Epstein files. And so now finally, since we're running out of time here, I'll just give you the Steve Bannon one. He's livid too for a slightly different reason, but this is a lot of pressure now to release the files. Watch this one.
They have to go and demand, they have to go to the court and demand and unseal the sealed evidence in Epstein. It starts there. Then bundle everything together you got, sealed and unsealed, and release it all. Or, which I've called for yesterday, appoint a special he should appoint a special prosecutor, special counsel now for the 2020 election and everything after that. And include Russiagate and all this, you have to do that. That should be done immediately. And that should report to the President of the United States. And also, they should do one if DOJ can't move off the dime, and the FBI can't move off the dime, there should be a special counsel to go through everything, and release it all.
If you said to me, Cenk, you think that a lot of Trump voters are gonna break with Trump once they see the disaster of his administration, blah, blah, blah. Do you think Steve Bannon will be calling for a special prosecutor, a kind of against Donald Trump because he wouldn't release the Epstein files within 6 months of him taking office? I said, you're crazy, man, that's never gonna happen. Right, there's plenty of nuance and you can say, well, you threw in the Russia hoax, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but you know what happened? Elon Musk said that Steve Bannon's in the files. So now Steve Bannon's like, wait a minute, I'm not in the files. Release the goddamn files. Oh, I like that strategy. Last thing, guys, which is what is the excuse they're gonna land on? So Alex Jones on day 2, on day 1, he was crying, sobbing, right? Like, oh, Trump, why did you do this, Trump? Day 2, he's like, oh, I got it. Trump is trying to save us because the people that did these crimes are too big to jail. And if we expose who they are, the world economy will collapse. Oh, thank God Donald Trump is protecting these pedophiles. Oops. Okay, so that one didn't work at all. People are like, what? You want to protect the bankers and other people, the elites that raped underage girls because you think it'll hurt the economy? Nah. So now they're landing on the one they should have started with, but now you know it's a lie because they came up with it in the middle, which is, oh yeah. Biden ate my homework. Biden destroyed the files. Of course, the Democrats destroyed the files. Well, did they destroy them in Trump's first term? Oops, Trump never released them in his first term. Epstein died in Trump's first term, did nothing about it, and he released not a single name, didn't prosecute a single person in his first term, and he has declared definitively that they're not going to prosecute a single person who committed all those rapes of underage girls. So later, when they change their excuse to, oh, I meant Biden destroyed the evidence or Democrats destroyed the evidence, you know now it is 100% full of crap. No, Trump said definitively before they came up with that excuse, no, we are choosing not to prosecute a single person and there is no client list. The absurdity of maybe those girls raped themselves. I mean, that's insane, totally insane. That's why even the MAGA voters are like, bridge too far. This is the exact opposite of what we voted for. All right, guys, we got a bonus episode for you guys, amazing stories there, including, wait, I love this one. Oh, the Alpha ambassador. Basically, Borat gets nominated to be a US ambassador. We'll tell you all about that if you're a member. Hit the join button below or tyt.com/join. We'll see you there.